But Pat, the question that we had is, what was the impetus for the article in the first place? Have you had a chance to look through the article?
Well, yeah, I remember the whole process. We just decided that we were going to do like a series on, who the top 10 teams were in Oakland County history. And, I just had an idea to do that. And, I went around researching it, and we did a little crowdsourcing too. We put some things in the paper and online to have people see, give their chance. It wasn't just going to be me picking it. So,
right.
So we had a lot of different votes for a lot of different teams. So,
well, I guess it's interesting also understand your background and where where you had some understanding of the team. Why don't you tell us about where you went to school and the time you
went to school? I'm very familiar with that team. More familiar with that team than any other one, with the exception we had the 1976 Clarkston baseball team on there, like a number 7 or something, that had Steve Howe. But I went to Groves High School and lived by the school. So every time the lights would go on, I'd go up there, and you guys were playing at Groves at the time, your home games. So I went up there and started watching the games. Oh, I don't know. I moved into that neighborhood in around 1971. Gotcha. So I watched the Brother Rice games that were played there. Whenever those lights would go on, I would head up there. It seemed like, and sometimes it would be, when I was younger, it'd be a JV football game on a Thursday or something. But the Brother Rice games, especially that year and the year before, when the team was really good, it started to captivate me because, like everybody else that grew up in that area, I got the Birmingham eccentric, and and I was, I wasn't like idolizing the athletes, the professional athletes at the time, the players that would be like, a year, 2, 3 years older than me that were playing high school at the local high schools, and my own high school that I went to, Groves and Brother Rice and Seaholm and everything. And also the star athletes from Detroit and all that at the time. So when this team got a lot of votes, I didn't have any hesitation. I didn't think you guys stuffed the ballot box or anything.
Right.
And I knew the background of all the Division I players and the Lions players. It got a lot of attention at the time. And I knew who Al was at the time and what he was like at that time, Al Fracassa, your coach.
Sure.
I used to go to those games, and he looked like a Roman god to me standing on the sideline. And, that particular year, I was playing JV football at Groves. I was in 10th grade. So I was particularly interested in all that. I think it caught my attention, and I would know who the players were and all that. So I'm very familiar with your team. And some of the players that were on the team, not many, but, I was familiar with them from playing baseball, particularly Tom Henry, who was in my age group, but he was a year older. He was a grade ahead of me, but in my age group for sports. So
Tom was actually the only one on our team that made it all the way to the big dance, the NFL. He had a cup of coffee for the Seattle Seahawks. So we planned our flag.
Tom, we were like in Little League. We were the two, we were the two guys that scared the other guys when we were 12. We Little League guys throwing hard, and and I think I might have played grade school basketball and had to guard him, but I'm sure that didn't go well. He was such a great athlete. And all those things. So, and I always admired Tom. He was everything I wish I could have been at that age, so together and everything. And he was a fabulous athlete. And then, and I told you this, and I told Dan McLean this when we talked about
it. Dan's just joined us, so he's listening.
I played against a lot of those guys in the spring that year on the baseball team at Groves, the varsity. we played in the state tournament against Brother Rice, and we lost a close game, but Kochansky pitched, Mark Kochansky, and he threw really hard. And all these guys had their names in the paper. And, Mike Cullen, Mike Cullen was one of the best high school football players, I've ever seen to this day. His junior year, it was a shame he got hurt his senior year. But he was fabulous, And you guys had a lot of backs. And there were some other guys like Mark Warner. I think I played summer league baseball with him. But I didn't know those guys. I didn't know, but I vividly remember Larry Clark. I vividly remember, obviously Tom, he was the catcher,
Yep.
And Cullen made a play on me at the end of the game when it was a close game, and it was at St. James, and it was like this fabulous catch, where he dove, caught the ball, but he put himself in a position where he would have blocked the ball, and it was at St. James. It would have rolled all the way to the fence. It might have a triple or a home run, and it was a close game. But it was like one of the better plays I'd ever seen up to that time. And, but the whole game, I was mesmerized by looking at Al in the third base box. He was the baseball coach.
We used to kid that he coached baseball like he coached football.
Well, I don't know. That team was
on third base, and his advice would be hit the ball. Right.
But he was, he was a legendary figure. He was like, to you guys know this. You guys have this special relationship with him. But at the time, it was, when you're a kid and you're reading in the papers and everything, and then you see this man who was this super handsome. And I'm of Italian descent,
Mm-hmm.
So, he was like a Greek god to me. I mean, I used to, and, when I first started talking to him, with the media, I was very nervous. I was like just out of college and all that. And one time I picked C-Home to beat him in a playoff game. And then I had to call him, and he goes, "You're the guy who picked us to win." He used to always call me Caputo at first, because he had a player at Shrine that was named Caputo. Right. So, but over the years, I got to know Al very well. I used to interrupt his vacations. And, the thing about Al that always stuck out to me in all the times I talked to him, every time I'd call him, and a lot of times it'd be in the summer, like when Jim Seymour passed or something, there was always a time where I had to call him, and he was on his 1-week vacation up north. And he would always hand the phone immediately to his wife, Phyllis. And it would simply be talk to Phyllis for a few minutes. Simply because I knew Mark Secantine owns a varsity shop and all that. His father was Vince Secantine. That was Phyllis's brother. And she missed her brother, And I would talk to him because I knew Vince Secantine a little bit from when I was a kid. Mark and I were on all these baseball teams together. And he would always make sure that he did that first thing. And, because it made his wife feel good to talk about her brother. So that shows you what type of person Al is.
Well, and I'm sure he took a personal interest in your career too, like he did a lot of the people that covered the high school sports. That's just his nature. We just had our 50th reunion about 2 months ago, and it's amazing how much he recalls from that 74 season.
Well, he was, he knew. I mean, I've done stories, like I said, about Jim Seymour. Played for him at Shrine in the 60s and was an All-American player, 9th overall pick in the draft. I did stories about Greg Collins, whose brother was on your team, Kevin Collins.
Sure. Yep.
And, when he was in a movie, and, Straight Outta Compton. I think that was the name of the movie, the one.
Yeah, yeah.
And
among many. I mean, he's been in a lot.
Yeah. And so he knew all the details about those guys and what they've done. And the thing is, I've talked to people who didn't play much at Brother Rice because your team was so competitive. You guys got to play, but there were some guys that were pretty good athletes that really didn't get to play, or even not that good athletes who were on the team. And he recalls all of them, and he's pretty amazing that way.
Yeah. Well, just to demonstrate the depth we had on that team, you were talking about Tom Henry and what a great athlete Tom was. Tom couldn't break into the starting lineup because he had Rock Rote ahead of him at
Right.
tight end, who went
And
on
Kurt
to
Griffin,
Florida.
didn't you have Kurt Griffin and
Kurt Griffin at wide receiver, yeah, but then he was also a backup quarterback, and you had Don Hendricks, who was a great quarterback in high school, and Don's backup was Rock Rote, who's Tobin
right,
Rote's
son,
son, right? So
right,
poor Tom Henry, who's arguably probably the most accomplished athlete from that team, he couldn't even break into the starting lineup. That kind of tells you what kind of draw of athletes that we had there. Guys like Jim Levois, who in 8th grade had 22 touchdowns in a 6-game season. It was a pretty competitive team. What was the buzz in the neighborhood for the team when you were growing up?
Well, at the time, one of the reasons why that team deserves all the recognition that it deserves is how good high school football happened to be in the year of 1974.
Right.
That was the year Rick Leach was a senior at Flint Southwestern. They lost one game, and that was to, I believe it was Waterford Mott of all teams.
Right.
And Cass Tech at Harlan Huckabee, who,
Tom Stanton, who started at defensive end for U of M too. I mean, that was a
Stanton's a basketball guy at that time. Great athlete. Yeah, and so that team they lost one game to Redford, which had a great team that year as well, and were ranked in the top 5. Farmington Harrison, that was their first grade team. They had a couple great players. Sam Pink comes to mind, the quarterback. He played briefly at Purdue, and was a linebacker. They lost one game to Plymouth Salem. All those teams were rated in the top 10 that I just mentioned in the final AP poll. And it was just, and it was also a year after, and this would have been a great thing if you guys with your team at the same age had played Saginaw Arthur Hill. 73 the year before, 443 points to nothing in the Saginaw Valley League. And Hazel Park had a great team.
Yeah, they did.
And the SMA, the league with Seaholm and Southfield and Berkeley, Royal Oak, Kimball, Ferndale, that league at that time, you had huge student populations of kids, as in the baby boom time, kind of at the end of it. So schools were really, really populated. So every team you would play in the SMA would be really good, and they would kind of feed on each other and eat each other up, kind of like what you had in the Catholic League for many years. And, for Hazel Park to get through that, and they had a great coach in Chuck Skinner, was
whose son was in the championship game of the Catholic League our senior year. His son was starting safety, I think, and running back.
Right. So and of course Al's son, who I used to play IM sports against him. I think in college he was a Lambda guy. He was a pretty good athlete.
Jim Levois.
And you guys won that game 35 to nothing. And just kind of build on that. And you got 22 straight games that you won. You won the final 5 games, and then the next year lost to Divine Child after you and some others graduated. But players like Tom Henry and Dan McLean, and you had some pretty good juniors on your team for sure.
Yeah, we had some great juniors. Mike Cullen, Casey Ryan, Danny, Tom Henry. They were Kochansky, Larry Clark. The cupboard was not bare when we graduated in 74. And other than a fluke play, they probably could have run the table again.
Right. And, at the time, Brother Rice, they had just won the basketball championship the year before.
Yeah.
the state title, and that was the first one in the school's history of a state title. And that was kind of, in a way, the salad days. I know Brother Rice has had great teams in football forever, up until the last couple of years, but forever up until then. So I understand all that in the history, but it never quite like it was when you had this group that, 4, 5, 6 different parishes really fed into where you are. So you had great athletes that were Division I players, and then just a lot of really good players that came out of those teams. And you had the benefit of Al as the head coach, because that's where it started. And I used to laugh when people would say, well, Al goes out and recruits. And I'm like, well, Al doesn't have to recruit.
Right.
Look, everybody who's got a really good football player and wants to develop them is going to go to Brother Rice. And Al, is an amazing coach. He won with passing offenses. He won with you guys running the option. He adjusted his offense to get the best out of you guys.
Yep.
And that was always amazing. He was such a good offensive mind, and a really good play caller. I have gone back and looked. You got a lot of your videos up there. And I watched some of the the videos of that. You got a little like during the pandemic or something. I was looking through things and found that, and it was really, really amazing. Just the play calls. And you guys won a lot of those games easily. You just went right through those teams, and some of them were very good. And it built by the end of the year. Nobody would.
The most famous thing that happened our season that everyone recalls was De La Salle, and we had this play called right half at 2 power, and it was 4 power, and it was center and our left guard isolated the nose guard, left halfback and myself fullback isolated the linebacker, and then Cullen would follow in through that hole. And Matt Morrill, who was Earl Morrill's son, was the left tackle, so he had a one-on-one. So there was bad blood between Fracassa and Moranto, because who was the head coach at De La Salle. He called us cake eaters, and he told us, and they was talking trash during the summer about how his De La Salle guys were going to kick our ass because we were cake eaters. So Fracassa from the sidelines didn't even shuttle in the play. He called it the first time, and then for 5 consecutive times until we scored a touchdown, all he did was yell from the sidelines, "Run it again." And we ran right at Mike Decker. If you remember Mike Decker, he
played at Michigan State.
Played at Michigan State. He was the linebacker, and we had to isolate on him for the double team. But that's how much confidence he had in us, that he could just show Moranto his hand and said, "Okay, go ahead and stop us. I'm going to tell you what I'm going to run right at you, and we're going to do it until we score a touchdown." And that's what happened.
Well, you got I think there was a misconception a lot of times about Brother Rice athletes too. You mentioned the cake eater thing. At the time, that was such a wealthy area. All those things.
Oh, yeah.
Oakland County was, I think, the second wealthiest county in the nation. They used to always say that, and I don't know who was number 1, but I used to always hear that Oakland County was number 2. All the big execs lived out there. Football stars lived out
big 3.
Yeah. So you guys got that reputation, but like yourself, you grew up in Cranbrook Village, which was a middle class area. That's where McLean's grew up, and how many kids did they have? So I don't,
Dan could have been your teammate if he hadn't gone to Brother Rice, because he was in the Groves district.
Yeah, and I was on the JV team, so I wouldn't have played with you, but I would have played with Dan. So and those it wasn't a bunch of wealthy. It was really good kids. And in Birmingham at the time, it was kind of separated between, the east end of Birmingham, which was similar to Royal Oak, where I lived when I first, moved there. And they had small houses. Now they've taken the houses and built upon them and all that. The house that I grew up in Beverly Hills was a 1,500 square foot ranch.
Right.
That had no basement. And now it's a 7,000 because it was on a third of an acre. Somebody built and built and built and built on it to make it a multi-million-dollar home. So it was a little bit different then. It wasn't all okay. You guys had some guys, I'm sure, that had money, but the core of that.
St. Bede was mostly Cranbrook Village and Lathrop Village. That was, other than Lathrop Village, Cranbrook Village was working class. That was a lot of blue collar.
Yeah.
You had Queen of Martyrs. That was Royal Oak. So you had some, and then you had Hugo's, which was the la-di-da area out in Bluefield Hills. But it was
those two. But even the kids though that at that particular time, that may have been from some wealth, also had parents who were successful, and they did not act like that. They were not given things. I don't remember.
We weren't allowed to, because there was Percasa brought the Royal Oak Shrine attitude to Brother Rice. So, he'll tell you, he loved those Royal Oak Shrine kids because, they'd run through a wall for him. And when you talk to him about his first couple of years at Brother Rice, it was tough. It was, he wasn't sure he liked those kids. But, once he got his process in place and once the players all bought into it, there was really not a lot different between the Brother Rice football player and Shrine football player, other than a couple miles difference between their
it always, like I said, and I don't know, I didn't talk to, Tom past like grade school or whatever. But he always handled himself. He was from a big family too. I think he had a brother who was like my age, and Mike. And he, those kids handled themselves very well. And it was always like that. And I played my summer coach in baseball. It was Gordon Nabilski's grandfather, and then his father. Bruce Nabilski. So I just had a connection there with those guys. And they always handled themselves well. As a matter of fact, I remember I saw Mike Cullen at the McDonald's on Southfield Road one day. It was there, him and another guy with their girlfriends or their dates or whatever. And I went up and I said, "Hey, that was a really good catch you made on me." And he just kind of looked and smiled and said, "Thanks." He wasn't a jerk about it or anything.
Yeah.
But they always handled themselves very well. And I think, if you look, I guarantee you the majority of them have been successful. I think so that's one of the big things about it.
Well, that's really in the reunion, the thing that really struck me 50 years later was this isn't like Bruce Springsteen and My Hometown, that you couldn't get out of that high school hero. Life didn't go on past your senior year in high school. On our team, Jim Levois ended up being executive VP of North American operations at Mazda. You got John Russell, who's chairman of the board of Consumers Energy. Don Hendricks ended up selling, built a company from scratch and ended up selling it to Berkshire Hathaway for about $500 million. Rock Rote was a sports editor at WNBC in New York City. And Danny, everyone wants to be, Dan McLean,
Right.
In hindsight, that, we had our business careers, but we all pined for what Dan has been able to build over at Detroit Country Day. Cause you remember back in the day when you were at Groves and we were at Brother Rice, Country Day was a right turn.
Yeah, it athletically.
They had festival seating on the lawn. They didn't even have a regular stadium. And you think back to to our days back in the mid 70s and what Dan's been able to build, at his career.
Every time I drive by Country Day, which I do quite a bit on my way to work, I sometimes take Losser. And when I drive by there, I just look at the beautiful stadium they have, and then they got this beautiful practice field right behind it. And I just sometimes want to pull off, just drive up there, grab a football, and start kicking field goals into the net, because it's so nice, it's like, I said, well, if somebody questions me about it, I said, I know Dan McLean, and I'll be fine.
We gotta, Pat, you and I, we got to start a campaign, get them to name that field after Dan.
Yeah, well, I don't know.
They were nothing before he got there, and
they named the other one after Joe. Have they done that, or what have they done? So they got a few people there, but Dan has taken the program and made it something pretty good. So, and it can feel good after a rough Groves-like year. Groves has switched places with Country Day this year.
Well, Dan tells a funny story about that you told him about all these short-haired crew cut and Princeton cut football players walking onto the field with their helmets under, 2x2, in the reaction that had, and warming up in silence. Do you want to elaborate on that?
Well, I don't remember that, to be honest with you. Did I tell him that? Was at Brother Rice?
You kind of told me that you wanted to go over and punch your coach. You said, I think you related it. And I don't want to put words in your mouth, but you said, like you guys were like rock stars, and you came out there and you looked all clean cut. And,
yeah. Well, see, and I don't know. It goes to, again, this isn't why you guys were put number one team. All right. This goes back to like growing up in that area at the time. This would be when Brother Rice played. Like, it had an aura about it. It would just, just surround those who were watching it. All right. So if you guys went out on the field and you warmed up, and your uniforms were black, white pants, right? And your helmets were that orange. They were the best looking uniforms anybody had. And your players looked bigger than other players. They looked faster than other players. Even if maybe that wasn't so. For example, the high school that I played at, we didn't have as many Division I guys as you did, but we had a lot of them. A starting wide receiver at South Carolina, a starting linebacker at San Diego State, a starting tackle at Wyoming, a captain of the Western Michigan football team, a linebacker at the time. It was an all-state baseball player too. We had tons of athletes, and we couldn't win. Now, our schedule was very difficult, but the aura that you guys had, it would be over against a team like ours before the game even began. Mm-hmm. You were Brother Rice. And I felt that a little bit because in baseball, it was more equal between our two schools. Yep. But I felt that because Brother Rice may have had their best baseball team at that time, up to that time.
Yeah, you're right. That your senior year,
right.
Dan's senior year, that was the first time that baseball team won the Catholic League.
I saw So when we played them in the tournament, and I could feel that, and everybody was all the names were in the paper. You mentioned Casey Ryan. I went back and looked at the all state teams and all that. I would have thought Casey Ryan would have been the captain of every one of those teams based on his reputation as a high school football player. I mean, I'd hear Casey Ryan, and over and over and over again. That player, he was considered so special. And he ended up at Notre Dame, right? I mean,
and he got his knee blown out. Was what it was? Dan, his junior or sophomore, freshman or sophomore year.
I think it was the start of his sophomore season.
Yeah. So these guys, all of them, and the thing that wasn't fair to a lot of the players individually, I don't think you guys care that much about it. Was when I went back and looked at who made what team. You guys could have had 5-6 guys on the all suburban team. All right. both Ted, your senior year and Dan's senior year. You could have had, 5, 6 guys on there easily. All right. Yeah. And you didn't get it because they were going to limit that. They weren't going to have the whole team of Brother Rice players. But that's how good the individual players were at Brother Rice at the time. And that team, and I played against Harrison, the team that went to the state championship game in the playoffs began.
Sure.
I played against Royal Oak.
Franklin Churchill, didn't they win it that first year?
Yeah, the first year was Franklin. The second year,
Franklin. Yeah.
Second year, my senior year, was Midland Dow beating Farmington Harrison. So I played against that Harrison team. I played against Royal Oak Dondero, which was ranked number 1.
Sure. Big school too.
Big school, tough kids, all that. Really tough. Well coached by a legendary coach. And the Brother Rice team from 74 would have beaten all those teams. We played Southfield when they won the SMA my senior year. You would have won those games. You would have beaten all those teams. I'm pretty sure of it. And it wouldn't have been that close if you guys really put the pedal to the metal. And they were great high school teams. So
you're looking at 14 Division I scholarship football players. Another 5 went Division II and III. That's 19 out of a roster of 42.
Right.
And then our MVP didn't even play college football. Mike Cullen went to the College World Series for Florida State in baseball.
Yeah, didn't he sign originally to play for Eddie Stenke?
Yeah, he did. It was not a good.
I used to read about Mike Cullen in the Eccentric all the time. Every football and baseball.
Yeah, no, he played for Stenke for a year, and I think that was pretty much it. And he said that when South Alabama played Florida State, that the Florida State coach was the one that kind of on the sly recruited him to transfer, and that's how he ended up.
Yeah, he was a great athlete. He truly was. Great.
Yeah,
athlete.
I just talked to him.
Yeah,
he played in Little League, Pony, Colt, and College World Series. So all 4 of those. So that tells you what kind of team they had in North Farmington, but also what kind of athlete he was. So
you look at just the I don't know. There's just one great athlete after another on that team. You mentioned the quarterback, Hendricks.
Don Hendricks, yeah.
Can you imagine being the quarterback of that team? That would be something else. It's great to be on the team and doing different roles, but you're the quarterback on that team.
Well, he was a great athlete, but unfortunately, he wrecked his thigh his sophomore year, and I think psychologically it took him another year to get over that. So he really wasn't the athlete that he started off at Brother Rice at until his senior year, when he psychologically got through that whole issue with he had a calcium buildup on his thigh that just kind of messed him up.
So it was a great team, and everybody looks at it. They had a lot of nuts and bolts, but I guarantee you there was no weak link on that team.
Right.
Like you guys probably, if you played your second team, they would win a lot of games even at the Class A level. So that's how good that team was, And also, some of your assistant coaches too. They have all these coaches now. It's like 1,000 coaches. That team had Ron Kelzinski, who I know his brother Ken Cal real well. I do a lot of stuff with him. A hockey show with him for years.
Red Wings,
right? And and he was a defensive coach, brilliant coach, well respected. Ted Popson did the line, right? And you had John Wall.
Mike Popson and Coach Walker, who ended up starting the Troy Athens program.
Right.
Yeah.
So
he's in the Hall of Fame.
Right. It's just, he had 4 guys, and again, everything, with you guys, and I think you'd agree with this, was about Al. I remember talking to people, when Al got older, like, oh man, Al can't do it anymore. Come on, and I'm like, be careful what you ask for. All right.
Mhm.
You know,
Yeah.
you're never going to have another coach like that ever.
Well, and that the unfortunate thing is they, after he retired is when you realize that Brother Rice was playing with house money when they had Fracassa as their head coach, because a lot of sins of that lacking in the facility itself were glossed over because you were playing for Al Fracassa, and there's a reason why they're on their third coach after 10 years after his retirement. There's just the emperor has no clothes.
Well, they
And
play.
when
It's not easy.
no,
To do.
especially when you're
You guys
competing.
need to have a home field. All right.
Right.
For a long time. I mean, for a long time. And I've been in your weight room. I had to go over there a few times. The weight room that you guys had, it wasn't fancy. All right.
Right.
And but it was, there were a lot of kids in there.
Yeah.
Music was loud, and they were pumping the iron and getting ready. So
There you go.
it's that's it's about that certain type of thing that comes around. Now, I know John Harrington very well. Like I said, he was the baseball and football coach, like Al at Harrison. So and we played Harrison and everything. I admired John Harrington a great deal, and I know he's got more wins and state championships than Al.
Right.
Marty Ludner did a great story in which he had the two talk to each other in the Eccentric, which I loved, and Marty does terrific work, and or did. Now he's retired, but I have to say that it's Al didn't. His Shrine teams would have won state championships if they had 8 different teams. All right,
Yeah.
in different classes. Your team would have won the state championship, in my opinion. And even the team from your junior year would have had a pretty good shot. And if you had all playoffs, the 75 team would have won.
Yeah.
All right? So Al would have won more state championships. There would have been more playoff games in the first 14, 15 years of his career. He started in 1960 at Shrine. And if you added those games up, he would have been the winningest coach. And I think he would have even won more state championships than the great John Harrington. So
yeah, they were both great coaches, and they were
Brilliant.
good colleagues. They respected each other throughout their careers. So if you're going to finish 1-2, that's a good combination there.
Yeah, but I looked it up. Al was 6-2 against John.
Yeah,
head to head. Yeah.
I think when he retired, he was it was 50-50 between him and Tom Mock.
Tom Mock's a great coach too, boy. Whoa.
Yeah.
And Catholic Central's got a great team this year and a great program. And you talk about facilities.
Yeah. Well, and that's part of the issue.
It used to be,
You got them out in Novi. You got Orchard Lake St. Mary's up there on the most beautiful lake in Oakland County.
Yeah.
There's a lot to compete in that. Now you got the Toledo Catholic schools too. So
yeah, but Orchard Lake St. Mary's, we used to be in our 4-way scrimmage against them, and they were a bunch of Polish kids from Hamtramck and the west side of Detroit, and they were so well coached by Art Patty, this other legendary coach. He ran this wing T, and you couldn't tell who had the ball. But the funny thing about it, he would have their players in the 4-way scrimmage wearing different numbers because he wanted to make sure nobody scouted him. And he had this quarterback, Jim Pechoric, that everybody knew about.
Oh, yeah.
He had him on like number 87 on or something. And even I knew then, standing there going, that's Jim Pechoric,
3-sport star.
Right. So, but that school was small then. All right.
Yeah.
That's small.
I think after DePores closed is when they figured out, hey, we've got this dormitory and we could get those kids that don't have a high school anymore. So they got about 8 of those kids from DePores after they closed. And
but you guys, you had big schools, big schools you're competing against. So did you have to play that have closed, like Austin?
Austin
Notre
closed,
Dame,
Bishop Gallagher, Bishop Borges, Notre Dame.
Yeah, those.
A lot of them
and everybody had good coaches and everybody had good teams. So then you guys played a pretty tough non-conference slate, going up to Bay City for your first game.
Yeah, that was the first time any team traveled outside of Oakland County for a regular season game. So
Right.
it was that was a big deal for us, and it kind of set us on our traveling tour of non-conference teams outstate and then out of state when they allowed us to do that. Hey, 50 years later, I want to ask Groves alum, what do you think about this weekend's game? Would you have ever figured that undefeated Groves would be going head to head in what district finals against crosstown rival Seaholm?
Well, they've done it a couple times.
Yeah.
You know, well, that whole thing with Groves, if Groves had such a problem getting its football program going. All right, it was way behind the times, and my coach Bill Rankin came in, and the first thing that happened is being Oakland County, even though it was very wealthy, they don't like taxes, so a millage didn't pass. So they weren't able to start their preseason on time and all that. His first team, they were overwhelmed and totally got crushed. And then the next year, they only won a couple games, but had some terrific athletes on it. And then same thing the next year, and the same thing my senior year. But eventually, they got it going. And Seaholm, used to beat us all the time, but we beat them my junior and senior year. And that game it was pretty intense. I don't remember much about high school baseball. I don't even remember what we did when we played Seaholm. It was a non-league game or whatever. I played with a lot of those guys in summer and things like that. The football game was a little intense, and it was always packed, So to have that and have two great teams playing against each other, especially Groves, this might be their best team. They got two great backs. I would like to see them, finish that tradition, because the following year Groves went 9-0 and they lost to Brother Rice in the playoffs, but that was their quarterback was hurt. And they had this running back named Bill Eberhard, still the best back they probably have ever had there from a high school level. He played at Hillsdale as a receiver when they went to the NAIA finals. He didn't bite on the big school kind. He's small, but he could have gone to those schools. But I'm happy for it, and I always respect, what happens in Birmingham. I always like the Seaholm kids. It wasn't like, my ass is grass.
I mean, if Brother Rice isn't going to be good, I just assume it'd be one of the schools I would have gone to.
You would have gone to Groves, right? Yeah.
Groves or Southfield Lathrop. We were literally, our house was split in half. We were right on the border. So
you would have been to Southfield Lathrop. You would have played for a great coach, Daryl Harper. He won a state championship there in 71. And I knew Daryl he was the first player to score points for the Buffalo Bills. Did you know that?
No, I didn't. I knew when I was going through, Bruce Rule was there.
Right. That's when they won.
He was like the first, other than Jim Seymour. He followed Jim Seymour as the biggest, hottest football athlete in the area.
Right.
And there were legendary stories about his coach getting him out of school on Friday afternoon so he could rest before the game that night. And he had a hell of a career at Ohio State, 4-year starter at defensive back.
Yeah, he did, except there's always that one highlight that Bruce Rule Levi Jackson running down the field by him.
Exactly. Unfortunately, that's the one thing he's remembered about.
Not at Ohio State, he's not. I mean, he's very well respected, but that's
he was like, a good athlete.
I remember watching it, it's like, that's Bruce Rule, because they only show one college football game a week back then on TV. So the high school games,
it was a big deal.
Yeah, it took on a big. I mean, you guys had big crowds there. We had big crowds. Even without that kind of success, and it's always great to go up to those games and watch them. I still remember it. I can still remember like standing in the end zone and seeing Mike Cullen kind of dance through. He always had balance. He'd put his arm on the ground and stay alive and, do things. And I thought
he was built low to the ground.
Yeah, he was, he knew how to run. He just had instincts and he was quick.
Yeah, we used to kid around. It's like those clowns that had all the sand in those punching bag clowns. He had all the sand at the bottom, so you couldn't knock him down. He was
like,
he was a load, and it was mostly in his thighs.
Right, you get hit, and and he also, great football players just have a knack. They know how to.
Yep.
And you had a lot of players like that just really had a knack, to play the game, fill the hole, fit their body in there.
Do you have any questions for Pat?
No, I just it's really great listening to this, and Pat, I love that story, and I don't know if you said it. I can't remember exactly what you said about you wanted to go over and punch your coach or something to that effect.
Oh, you mean like because of our team and the way we were, or
yeah, it was a funny story, but
Pat, a long time ago, like when you guys got a lot of pride about that. You still feel it to this day. You were on that team, and you guys have gone on to successful lives, and all those different things. For me, and I played on great high school baseball. There are very good high school baseball teams, and in the summer and all that. And so I felt that, but there's nothing like being on a great football team in high school. All right. And I really wanted to be on a great football team in high school. So when we had a lot of talent.
You obviously had a great love for it, though, Pat.
Yeah, I mean, we played as tough a schedule as there was in the state my senior year, because we played Bondero, Harrison. Southfield was 8-1, lost one game in the SMA, and we played Andover, which won the league, was like Clarkston and Lake Orion and all that in there. And they were real good. They had a quarterback who was recruited to Michigan and all that. So we play these fabulous teams. Yeah, but it's to this day, every time we lost a football game, it hurt. Football's got a certain physicality to it, where you feel like you got whipped, even if you went out and got some good sticks in. And for you guys to not feel that, all right, to feel the other end of it, which we did at times. We beat Seaholm a couple times. We beat Harrison. It was one of their 2 losses in 3 years or something. All those things, to feel that. I remember that, but that feeling of being on such a great football team, basically is carried through to you the rest of your life. As time has gone on, I've come to appreciate my high school football coach, Bill Rankin. He passed a few years ago, and I talked to him when Coach Skinner died, because they were rivals, Seaholm and Groves, and eventually did get it together with Groves, and they became very good. And part of the reason Groves is what they are today is because of what he did. And I'd like to say, maybe we laid the groundwork, but I don't know if that's necessarily true. I just remember the great feeling of winning in football was like nothing I ever felt, even with the success that I had in baseball. And I remember the feeling of losing being like nothing I've ever felt, even with the success or some of the failures. We didn't lose many games, but in baseball, but when you lose a baseball game, it didn't feel like when you lost a football game. It's just the way it is. So and to be on a team like that, and to this day, to be connected, and you guys all have that together, it's special. And you guys have stayed together for a long time, but I hadn't seen my teammates for a long time. But a couple times we've had get-togethers where I've seen some of those guys, and to this day we still have a connection, because of all you go through with your practice, your off season. Nothing is being closer to somebody that you went through that with. All right. One of my teammates passed a few years ago. It was like a year or so ago, and it really devastated me. Even though I kept in touch with him, but he was I played football with him. in baseball with him. His name was Randy Moon. And when I found out he played, at Michigan and all this, and when I found out he passed, it really had an effect on me that you don't have. It was just, hey, I knew this guy in high school because we had been through some stuff, those losses, the triumphs, the drives to the game, the bus to the game. We go on a bus to a football game with your pads on and everything.
Yep.
You only go through that once in your life, and I'm sure Dan didn't experience that at Illinois. But it's a little bit different, type of thing. And, carry it with you forever. Like it's felt with you guys. And I don't resent this about you. I admire this about you. So I've always respected Brother Rice for that reason. And of course, Al, who, down through the years, I got to talk to for many periods of time on the phone. What a great man. And, I appreciate all that you've done for him, knowing the sacrifice that he made for you all. He could have made a lot more money, lived in a lot bigger house than some house in Warren, if he
living in the same house he was living when we were 50 years ago when we were in high school.
There's a guy who's got his priorities in place. All right.
Yep.
And, he took care of you all very, very well. And I know you appreciate it. So, and I think it's a great story, this many years later, that actually you have this much of a connection with each other. I think it's a great thing.
Yeah.
Pat, it's great though that you kind of, you're just, I've come to know that you are a great storyteller, and the fact that you revel in that and fully understand the full kind of meaning. There's not a lot of people, there's some people who this is very foreign to, but it is an amazing bond, and the game itself, creates a lot of that. But then you enter a guy like Al Fracassa, and then you have, the group of us young guys, like you said, from all these different parishes who were at one point rivals, and then they become a team.
Right.
It's pretty compelling, and it's great that I just think it's awesome that you kind of take such joy from it, and it's really nice, and it is a great thing. Just one thing to add. My brothers played on some state championship teams, and I will attribute this as much to Coach, but to Ted. They always say that your team is the closest, the best in terms of the relationships, and a lot of it is we had great coaches, we were hungry, but Ted, Kevin Hart, Tommy Gorman, and other guys, it was a team that had kind of made up their mind that they were going to get something done, because as Ted said, Coach had some great players and some great teams, but it wasn't until everybody was on the same page. And we had a great freshman coach, Dave Yeager, who was Coach's quarterback at Shrine. And he was very important to that whole process as well. But it was, like you said, it was awesome. We're still enjoying it here 50 years later.
Well, you and I talked, and that at that era, at that time, people, in our age group, and I'm a little bit younger than you guys, but just a year or two, they like to party. It wasn't the cool thing necessarily to be a jock. All right. And you guys, I talked to you, said some of the guys that had Brother Rice were talented before that, but really didn't buy into the things that you guys started to buy into with that.
Yeah.
And one of the things that, I always think, man, if I got to go to college again, would I have wasted my time at all? Drinking beer or whatever I was doing sometimes. I used to play basketball every day. I had to play basketball every day. I know I would have, taken a lot more stock into the opportunity that was there for me. If I were in high school now and the same opportunities were there, I would have done a lot more, with what I had, if I knew what I knew then than I know now. See, the difference between your group, you understood then what you understand now. I think that's the difference between what that 74 team did. You guys carried yourself in a certain way. And that certain way, I think, is what made that team, what I thought was the best team of all time in the history of Oakland County. And so did a lot of our readers.
Yeah, that's great.
All right, Pat. Well, I really appreciate you taking the time. It's been great catching up with you, and you don't even know the impact that that article had on us some 30 years after the fact, to be able to have these old geezers get recognized.
Yeah, I know what you're saying. I went to the Planet Fitness. I used to go up there and go in before I go to work and do my radio show at night. And I saw Dan's brother Tom in there, who I love. Tom, he's the best. He coaches the St. Regis team and all that. And he's up there on the treadmill watching Fox News, and I say to Tom, he goes up to me, he goes, "Hey," he says to me, he says, you know that kid who's pitching for Michigan, Tommy Henry? He goes, "That's Tom Henry's kid." And my first thought was, on the old geezer thing, it's like, man, I'm glad he's his son, not his grandson.
Yeah.
Good for Tom. That made me feel better. It's like, yeah, it's his son still. I'm still in the son category.
It's awesome.
So,
Well,
but
Pat,
anyway,
thank you so
I
much.
appreciate it. Yeah,
Really
care.
appreciate you with your remembrances, and if you can just hold off closing out until your file uploads to the site, and it should tell you, but just give us a couple minutes after we close out so we can upload that file.
Okay.
Thanks so much, Pat.
Take care. Take care, you guys.
God bless.
All right.
All right, Ted.
Yep.
Thank you.